This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. I'd like to call this meeting of the Port Orford City Planning Commission to order. It's 3:33, November 12th, 2024. Let's see, I'm going to call the roll. Commissioner Boydston,
Present.
Commissioner Lawton,
Present.
Commissioner Lovendall,
Present.
Commissioner Thielen is here. Chair comments. We have been working on the DLCD grant for housing for the city for the past few meetings, and it's come to our attention that there is another minor change, seems to be a minor to me, change to the code that we would like to have go through with the process of notification to the citizens and so forth, which would be really an easy tack on. But unfortunately, I'm not sure the city has enough money to actually pay for the time to have that done. So what I'm doing right now is I'm welcoming anyone in the public that would like to make a contribution, tax-free contribution to the planning, to the city, to the planning commission. Maybe it would help to defray the expenses for that little piece that we would like to get through. So the Parks Commission does that. They did it with their swing set and so forth, and money was raised. But if anybody would like to chip in, it's like that old bumper sticker, I wish they had a bake sale if they had a bake sale for wars, things would be better. But we are what we are. We do what we do.
Greg, what was that for?
That's for that is for to change the water and sewer requirements for all districts to be the same as it is in 10MU. It's in your minutes there. We're going to discuss that. That's one of our discussion items today, that we may want to make a recommendation to the city council. So this all we can do is make recommendations, but it seems to make sense to me. So that's why I put it on the agenda. Okay, I'm going to move right on to public comment. Oh, the minutes. The minutes from October 8th, it says will be available next month.
Yes. I got a little too busy to get them done. Last time I also forgot to bring my laptop, so they were handwritten, which then need to be transposed. But this time I have my laptop, so shouldn't be as hard to get them done next month.
All right, thank you, Joseph. Public comments. Are there any members of the public present who would like to make a comment on any of the agenda items? Anyone online?
Only Crystal.
Okay. Well, let's move on to number 5, planning matters, the DLCD grant, items for discussion. We've got review of proposed uses in all zones, and I see Crystal is online. Maybe she can lead us through this section.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'm not there with you to help get the labels on, but I want to know if we have the same page numbers. My page numbers start with 1 on the staff report that I wrote, but I don't know if yours are incorporated into the packet or not.
I see page number 1 on the staff report.
Okay,
So,
then we should be okay, because then I can refer to the page numbers as we go. So the first thing, you see that there's a few things that I've listed here on the agenda: review of the proposed use zones and site plan reviews. And as I was working on this, I included a lot of things as conditional use permits, because that was something that we already had set up. And it was a way to bring things to the public And the more I thought about that, every time I opened this um, code amendment package to look at it, I thought, that's wrong. People aren't going to like that. The city council is not going to like it when we change everything to conditional uses. So during this past month, when I was working on this, I made a change to a lot of those conditional uses that never were conditional uses in the past. And I changed them to outright uses with site plan review. And the benefit of that is that the public doesn't think that we are possibly going to cut them off where they can't do their project, because a site plan review and a conditional, excuse me, and a conditional use permit are very much the same, but the public doesn't view them that way. The public views a site plan review as something where you come and you bring your site plan and you come together on it. And a conditional use permit, they view it as something that could be denied. And that kind of scared me. And I kept thinking, how do we do this? How do we do this? And decided that really we needed to put the ones that had always been outright uses into the site plan review thing. And that has two benefits. Number one, we already had a site plan review section, but we didn't have it really looped into the code properly, because when I did that with Port Orford, I was a consultant and I wasn't doing any regular work for the city. And a consultant just gives you the bare bones of what needs to go into the code. And the cities a lot of times will take that and they will put it into the code. But if it doesn't have the connections, it has loose ends. And that's how I've always thought ours was. And so I thought this was the time to get rid of those loose ends, say how we're going to process a site plan review. Also, authorize Joseph and the city in doing the site plan reviews we have to do every day for planning clearances. That's an interesting thing, but we've always done it, and it's an important part of what we do. But it never had an authorization or a way that said how we were going to do that. So we'll get to that pretty soon, but that's the main thing that I wanted to show you today. And as we go through this, I'm going to point that out to you. So I thought the best way would be to go through the use zones, where we have tried to include all of the uses that aren't changed by the state or something, or by our housing codes that we want to update, and put them back as outright uses, and then give them a site plan review, which they were going to have anyway. We just didn't have it authorized or explained in our code. So let's start. We don't need to look at the definitions again today. By the way, I have the wrong date. I was planning to do this in December, and that's on page 1. It says that it's prepared for the December meeting. But if you're keeping track, this was actually prepared for this meeting, because I changed that in midstream and decided I was going to meet with you at this meeting. Okay, let me get something here. So let's go to let's just go through the definitions and go on to page, I think it's 6, it's page 6, where we start having the use zones. So I'd like to go through all of the use zones, because what I did this month also was do check marks on a separate paper so that I knew that we had included all the uses that we wanted in this zone. So there wasn't something that was going to be discovered that was laying out there that we hadn't picked up, because we had to change a lot of terminology and things like that. So on page 6 is the R1 zone. That is our residential, most restrictive residential zone. So as you go through here, you'll see that I still have my notes on here. Those will be taken off soon. But the R1 zone, you go down to the yellow on page 6 towards the bottom. And I just wanted you to know that this child care and registered family care, those are definitions from the state, and we had to insert those that way. You also see on this, you have number 3, accessory dwelling unit. That's a new thing completely. You'll see above that in number 2, we have manufactured home and prefabricated dwelling. That's a different wording, but we had that before, and that was referred to 1716-040, which we've changed, but it's still, we changed it to comply with state law, but it's still in there. Then registered family child care is which is number 5. Well, it's number 6. That's something that the state has a rule for, and they take people through that. And we don't have too much to say about it. It can happen in all residential zones. And it's just kind of like a home use. But they want us to have it as a home occupation. And so I had to connect it to our home occupation, which is 1716-050. Let's go to page 7. Now, page 7, on down past the middle, we have the R2 zone, which is a little bit more of a liberal zone for residential because it includes multi-unit dwellings. I also changed, I had multi-household, I had 1 household, 2 household, and I saw that other people in the state were using the word unit. And so I decided that might be better. So I changed all of those to single unit instead of single family, where before I was going to change them to single household. And I don't know that one's any better, but I would like to be a little bit more in line with what other people are doing. So as we go along here, if you have some question or concern, you just raise your hand and bring it up, because I don't want to dictate all this stuff, but I do want to show you what I tried to fix up. And Greg, if you think I need to stop or slow down or something, let me know. Okay, so in the residential 2 R zone, so we have some of the same things that we already have in the R1, but we have more. So let's go to page 8. And under conditional uses on page 8, we do have some things that are appropriate to be conditional uses in the R2 zone. And I think most of these always were, but we've renamed some things. Instead of hospital and what all do we have? We had hospital, and then we had, oh, I know, it's down on number 8, hospital, sanitarium, retirement home. Nobody talks about sanitarium anymore. Retirement home seems a different thing than some of these other things, so we split them up. So we've got healthcare facility, residential care facility, retirement facility as one thing. And then we've taken out those other ones, and we left medical and dental clinic because they've always been in there, but they didn't really seem to be the same level of thing as some of these larger facilities. They would be small offices is the expectation. Those are number 8. So you can see that those were already in there because they're not bold. And then number 9, our planned unit development used to require 3 acres. Nobody ever used it. And we've got it described here without any limit on the size and a reference to where you learn how to do that.
So Crystal, on number 3, where instead of Grange Hall and community building, by putting public or nonprofit community facility, it just expands the potential for use.
Well, it wasn't intended to. I don't think anybody's building Grange halls nowadays.
Yeah.
And a community building would be a public or nonprofit community center. So I just tried to modernize the wording a little bit. Do you think
No, I
that
think it's better
works?
wording. Because there's potentially other possibilities under that title, I would think. It gives us more leeway.
You mean the one that I put in here now?
Public or nonprofit community facility, I think gives us a little more leeway because that could be a number of things, right?
That should be a what? I'm sorry.
No, I'm
think-
just agreeing with it.
I think she's
Okay,
agreeing.
okay, I wasn't sure. Yeah, great. It's hard to, I hate this virtual stuff, but I heard there was going to be a storm, so
Yeah.
Joseph recommended I maybe stay here.
We're happy you're safe.
Thank you.
So I have another
Okay,
question.
but if you don't agree with some of this stuff, it's fine to speak up. I just want to go through it.
So we have,
Okay, so let's go down to the commercial.
Uh, Commissioner,
is my mic on?
Commissioner Boydston had a question.
I have 2 number 8s. One is a commercial communication
No,
transmitter.
the numbering system is so screwed up because either I'm really stupid of how to use Microsoft Word, or Microsoft Word tells us how to do everything. And it could be a little of both. And these all came, I don't have a non-digitized copy of the code. And so everything that I take out of the code, I mean, I do a paper one, but then I have to retype everything, and that's really a pain.
Yeah.
So the numbering is just going to have to be different than what we've always done on codes, as far as I can see, because every time I try to put in both numbers and show which one I'm crossing out, the machine starts doing its own thing. And so we're just going to put eventually, I mean, the plan here is to just put the numbers as they should be and put a note at the front that we don't have the numbers, and we aren't showing which numbers are being taken out, because I don't know how to do it.
All right.
I've spent an hour on a page like this sometimes just trying to wrestle with the numbers, and it's ridiculous. And I've heard that other people do too.
Yeah.
But so commercial communications transmitters and receivers are,
They'll be number 8 because that hospital one is actually, well, yeah, that'll be
But I'm-
9. It'll be 9 and 10. Yeah.
but they're permitted as conditional use in a neighborhood or
Yes,
R2.
they've always been in there. Right.
Okay.
So I assume that, well, we actually have some up on the hill.
Coast Guard.
What's the name of your
Coast
hill up there
Guard.
where we have the
Mm-hmm.
transmitter?
Yep, it's up on Boot Hill Road.
Yeah, Boot Hill. I kept wanting to say one of our hills here, and I knew that wasn't right. Yeah,
I
so,
think I think that this sort of transmission stuff is federally mandated.
okay, so yeah, so the commercial communications transmitter will be number 9, and planned unit development will be 10, unless we change this some more.
Sure.
Okay, let's go to the 4C. So there's a question here on B. So we're talking about the procedures. We're saying that new or expanding structural development other than single unit dwellings or duplex and accessory uses are subject to site plan review by staff or referral to the planning commission. So, you know, your staff, Joseph, me, city manager, anybody can refer stuff to the planning commission if it's convoluted or difficult or it needs public involvement. And so we've given ourselves in A at the bottom, talking about procedures, the way that we're going to do this. And I see again, the numbers here are screwed up. I'll take care of that. They're letters this time.
I have a question.
Oh, Commissioner Lovendall has a question.
Hi,
Yes.
Crystal. Thanks for doing all this work. I have a question regarding changing from CUP, from conditional use permit to site plan, because they aren't really the same thing as far as I understand it.
They're
And so-
not, but people think that one's bad and one's good.
No, I think that they're both good and they both serve a positive purpose. And I think the conditional use, we can't deny a conditional use. We can only put
No, we
on
can't.
we can only put on restrictions or changes that we feel are advantageous to the neighborhood and maybe advantageous to the builder. So I have a little level of concern about changing things that we agreed to as a conditional use. Oh, you're back to a site plan review, because they really aren't the same. And it takes, in my mind, away the citizen input or ability to be involved in some of these decisions. I also think that you made a comment that the builders, when they see a conditional use permit, hearing that they can be denied. And I think it's incumbent upon us to let the builders know, no, that's not our intent. Our intent is to, change or make sure that whatever they build fits into the zone.
Well,
That's my 2 cents.
I don't disagree with you, but none of these conditional uses were in our previous code.
That's
That I changed to site plan were all new. It was a new format. And I don't know if that you want to take all these outright uses. I just could see a big problem if we took all these outright uses and made them conditional uses when people were like, we've never done any reviews whatsoever of most of these conditional uses in the C zone, the ones that we called that I was trying to change to conditional uses. And I thought, I don't think people are going to go for that. In the meantime, what we were always doing was site plan review, and we never gave it an option to be done by the Planning Commission. And I think that we definitely need to have more pairs of eyes than Joseph and I and Melissa looking at site plans. Because when you get a tough one, like a larger building, like an example was when we came in and the Dollar General came in, we didn't even get to put that in front of anybody because it was a permitted use without a site plan review. And I think that the Planning Commission should be able to see how that site is going to be and suggest if there are problems with the location of the accesses or the neighborhood where they need some trees or something to cut down on the lights. And we didn't have any of that. And I'm afraid that if we make those all conditional uses, like there's so many more things that are traditionally available to conditional uses when all we want to do is change around the site plan. In other words, to see if it fits into the commercial zone or something like that.
Right. I hear that. I just, I'm thinking of the Dollar General. I'm thinking of the neighborhoods around it and the ability for citizens to partake in that.
That's what we would have liked to have had.
I know. And that's why I'm hesitant to make a decision, to back away from conditional use permits just because we think, well, maybe a developer might not like it or they may shy away from it. But I don't think so. I
The
think
city wouldn't
developers and builders are pretty savvy.
Well, let's go through. Let's look at. Do you want to look at the site plan review now instead of later, because we're going to be going through these uses. Go to page 32.
Yeah, let's do that.
We could save this for next meeting if you want to get going. If you want to table this until next
I don't
meeting.
want to take long.
Okay, on page 32, are you guys on it?
Mhm.
So here's the purpose of the site plan review. And it's a section of the code 1733-010. And it's to promote public health, safety, and general welfare by providing for planning commission review of expansions of specified permitted existing developments and new developments to assure that there is compliance with city standards. So one of the things that I don't have yet here is what size, and you'll see that throughout, riddled still throughout the code, of what size buildings we are going to require to have a site plan review. In other words, Joseph does site plan review every month on a lot of small things that don't come to the planning commission. And so we don't necessarily want to do this by uses and say every grocery store, let's just say, we'll just pretend there's a small grocery store or there's a large grocery store. So if we put grocery store in here and we do it by use, that a grocery store is a conditional use, then even if somebody is going into an existing building that's already there, that's small, instead of having any outright uses, we would have to do a conditional use. But if we say it's a site plan for a new use and we give it a size limit like we did with the Battle Rock, we have one, but I think that's too big because it doesn't apply to most things. But if you said like any new development or if it causes a development of over 5,000 square feet for business purposes or you would just say non-residential, then you can look at that and sort out whether they have the things that are helpful to the city. And so we've never had an application for a site plan review before. And I started listing the things that we would need to have a site plan review on page 32. We have the application and what it would involve. Yep, they have to draw it to scale. They have to show all easements for utilities, which Joseph has to have them do now, but he doesn't have any description necessarily that tells them that to start with when they come in, and he has to kind of organize it. And Joseph, you correct me if I'm getting something wrong. And then utility easements, sewer and water hookups and locations and things like that. And then on to page 33, other things that we would need in the site plan. The overlays of different things that might apply to that property, the erosion and drainage plans, and a plan for a natural hazard for slope hazard if needed. That we want them to show the site and all the amenities on the site, like the streets and the street widths, the spacing, the vegetation, the landscaping, the fencing, anything that they're going to keep. On H, it says they have to comply with the state fire marshal and that they have to show that they have sign off from them. If they're going to have bathrooms and wastewater and things like that, or if it were a larger restaurant, and then they would need to have it approved by Public Works and DEQ. That's I. J, if there's setback areas or they're adjacent to residential properties, they would need to maybe show the landscaping and how they're going to do that and consult about plants that might be appropriate. Do a maintenance plan, show trash and recycling bin areas and areas for parking and loading, etc. So the site plan review, we've needed something like that to list all those things for a long time.
I noticed.
And yeah,
Crystal, I have a question. It looks like the ones you're going through and what's in this section are very similar to the things we went through with the RV park, where it is actually a conditional use permit.
yes.
What is the difference between a
Well, we've
conditional?
always had an RV park as a conditional use permit. And it's always been there, but it didn't have a lot of criteria. So the
I know
difference
that,
was,
let's
I
say,
wasn't,
let's say we left these, let's say we went ahead and said a hotel over 5,000 square feet has got to be a conditional use. Let's say that, and then, or let's say, for example, that we didn't say that, and we said any hotel over 5,000 square feet shall have a site plan review by the planning commission. What is the actual difference in actual, like,
I don't know that there's a lot of difference. I just know that cities designate, a lot of cities designate their site plan reviews of permitted uses to the staff or to the engineer. They have engineers on staff, they have an attorney on staff. Groups of the staff go together and do the site plan review. We don't have all those people. And I think on some of this stuff, the more eyes that can look at it, the better. And so the idea was to take a larger business, we set an amount, and then we say if they're over that size, the site plan review goes to the planning commission.
I see that, and so it sounds to me like they're the same thing in actuality. Joseph has something he would like to say.
I guess this would be a question to direct towards Crystal. Would a site plan review require public notice the same way a conditional use permit would?
If it went to the planning commission, it would.
Okay, so we'd still have to do a public hearing for it.
If we sent it to the planning commission, but if it was exempt, and I mean, because every site plan you do for a building permit that you do wouldn't have to have that.
So, excuse me.
Go ahead.
So
Commissioner.
I know that some cities and smaller cities have been doing what they call a minor conditional use permit. Are you familiar with that?
Well, I've heard that. I don't know.
I've just done did a little bit of
Type 1, yeah.
and so this sort of sounds like it. The only thing is that it's up to the discretion of the planner to whether they forward it to the planning commission or not for review. And the other,
it would be the size.
it would automatically come to the planning commission at a specified size.
Yes.
Okay. And then there would be a hearing or availability for public
People to
input.
talk and stuff.
Because I'm concerned about some, like Dollar General, and you've got houses behind there. Traffic impacts, and I just don't like to see the citizens left out of the.
I just don't like to change the uses that are allowed without a reason to do it. And that's what I always felt like I was doing wrong in the, when I did the former drafts and I changed everything to a conditional use permit, I felt every time I touched it, I thought there's something wrong with this because we were changing something that people felt like they could count on to something they didn't.
So if you are planning to build something in a zoned location that should be outright permitted, you don't need a conditional use permit for that. You shouldn't have to, but you should have a site plan, a detailed site plan, and which can be reviewed to make sure that you're not encroaching on some of these things like wetlands or utilities that might be somewhere or that sort of thing. So you shouldn't have to have, I don't think you should have to have a conditional use permit for every building if it's already going to go in a spot that's permitted, that's, zoned for that.
I agree that I like the idea of the site plan review on some things, but on some of these that are listed here, I'm concerned about noise, air pollution, lighting, those kinds of things that are beyond just what a typical site plan involves. And yet, if it's in a commercial zone, its impact on the local community. And those would be things like tire retreading or machine shops. You've got emissions on those kinds of things that in my mind should be monitored, which then should be moved, those things moved into conditional use permits as opposed to just some of these others.
I have a lot of question marks in the code under the industrial zone and the maybe less on the commercial zone. I'm going to go back to it and look, but there's a bunch of uses there that I don't even think you would want in your city.
Crystal, I think that we decided as a commission that we didn't want to have a tire retreading. I think we X'd that out.
I kind of thought maybe we did, and then I couldn't find it, and so I probably forgot to. So that's on page.
9.
What page is that on?
9. And things like even the storage, we should be reviewing if the storage involves toxic materials and putting some perhaps controls on them that would be part of a conditional use permit, but not necessarily a site plan.
Is tire retreading is on page 11, I believe.
It's also 12 on 9.
You want me to take that out?
It's on page 9, number 12.
Number 9.
I mean, it might be acceptable in an industrial zone.
It's actually
I don't have the same thing as you.
it's on both.
Mine is,
Page 11.
mine is the 4C.
On page 9
Yeah, it's 4C.
is 4C.
Oh, I see. Okay. You want that out of there?
Number 12, tire
Yeah,
retreading.
that's why I had the question marks. I thought maybe you had.
I believe we had struck that.
Mhm.
Okay.
I had
Well,
it.
you'll see on page 10. No, it's not 10. It's 11.
It's on 11, yes.
There's a whole bunch of them that I'm wondering if you, I mean, I think there would be a reason why you might not want these in the middle of your city. Like asphalt plants that, you know, they don't even allow those out in the country very much.
Mhm.
That's why I have a bunch of question marks.
But that's in industrial zone.
Well,
We still might not
it's a
want it.
hard one. You know, the industrial zone is on the edge of town, but the wind does
No,
blow
our
right now.
industrial zone has, is right in the middle of town, it seems like.
Yeah, yeah.
There is? I thought there was only just one section north of town. In any case, the wind does blow from that way.
Right, and anybody's gone up I-5, slaughterhouses can smell them from a big, far distance. So
5I is on the end of town.
just because something's in a industrial zone doesn't mean we have to include it.
No, it's
correct?
true.
Or same with 4C, just because something's in 4C, maybe we still need to regulate it.
Yeah, but the blues, there's,
I agree.
Well, yeah.
I agree with
Dark.
both of them.
Blue.
looks like it. 51.
Paper mill? No.
I did have another question,
Here.
Crystal.
So I'm still a little bit questioning where the industrial zone is then.
It's
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
just north of, it's just north of town. It's on the very north end of town.
I see it, okay. But it has residential and everything.
What,
Mhm.
yeah. What number are you at, Greg,
What number?
for industrial zone here?
It's 5I.
Street,
5I,
Right here,
there.
Over here.
right
Yeah.
here. Cedar Point,
Yeah.
right by Paradise Point, just south of Paradise Point Road,
right.
next to 101.
Madrona and Port Arthur.
I think that's the only piece of it.
Yeah.
These blues are kind of hard to tell apart.
I know, they look so similar.
And that it's so close to the lake.
I don't know what that Mather Drive is.
Kind of almost feeds into it.
Well, yeah, and I don't know what basis, we use for excluding things from an industrial zone.
Well, these are things that have kind of changed over the years. I think they used to be in towns. And now I would think most towns don't have these. That's the only reason I started putting the question marks.
Yeah. So are you saying that some towns would just, it's common for towns to just say, well, no more asphalt plants anywhere around?
Well, I mean, I think people would be pretty shocked if they got one.
Well, I can't imagine economically that this would be a place you'd want to put one in the first place,
And it,
but I'm just
Yeah.
I don't think, I mean, it's up to us. We don't have to allow a rendering plant or a cement plant. And I mean, just because it's an industrial doesn't mean we designate it as industrial, doesn't mean that we have to allow anything in it. We have the
Right.
the right to just
if
not
it's-
permit it.
If it's listed, wouldn't we have to defend?
We just don't list it.
Right.
We just take it off the
You just
list.
take it off.
That's what these question marks here.
Right.
Rendering plant at slaughterhouse, pulp paper mill, cement or asphalt plant,
Mm-hmm.
airport or heliport.
But like a business park, is that an industrial zone thing? Because a cabinet shop or a plumber's shop, those are usually like you have a business district in,
Yeah, machine shop or cabinet shop. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be industrial.
or, well, is it industrial or just a business park type thing?
Well, but that would fit in that.
Yes.
It's listed at this point.
Mhm.
I think those would be things that we would, wholesale trucking, machine shop,
Right.
utility facility, building material storage yard. Those are perfect uses for that,
Right.
Right.
seems to me. Well,
And the ones that Crystal questioned, I think she did rightly so.
what do we think? Should we, if it's not, if
I even started crossing some out, and then I thought I better leave them in there and highlight them.
I mean, if
So
we're
they've
not
got
going to
the crossouts in them, but they're still there.
crossing them out, let's just do a little quick up and down on rendering plant or slaughterhouse. Raise it if you like it. Raise your hand if you like it. Okay, pulp or paper mill.
Okay, what do you, Are you guys doing your decisions now?
Yes, we're making decisions.
You
We're
want the
doing-
rendering plant and slaughterhouse taken out?
That's out.
Okay.
Pulp or paper mill is out. How about cement or asphalt plant?
Out.
That's going out too. Airport or heliport? I can't see how a heliport would be a problem. I would think a heliport could be a good thing.
If you needed emergency evacuation or something.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well,
I think we should leave that one.
Do you want to leave airport too?
Well, we don't have enough
No,
room.
We don't have enough room for an airport.
Okay,
No,
we'll just
airport
put heliport then.
I mean, people will be, they'll be landing in our
Uh,
schoolyard.
RV park is in here.
I
With
put those in because I wondered if you wanted them in there. They didn't have them in that zone at all.
But you can have a single family dwelling. I would say yes. Anywhere you can live. Not
Well,
gonna,
would the challenge be if you've already allowed for a heliport, for instance, which can be noisy, and yet
Yes.
you're also allowing for residences or playgrounds, there's either a danger to those other uses or annoyance to those other uses. So I don't know, I have a hard time,
With the heliport.
yeah, with a heliport, but it is industrial too.
it is an
to-
industrial zone. It's not like it's
So we
been
need-
residential.
It's not that I don't think those heliports shouldn't be in industrial. I'm just thinking that the others, park and playground, that it's not necessarily a good mix is all.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
But
we should consider where our industrial zone is located, I think. It's not like we're having it way out in the boonies. It's right up next to Cedar Point and right up there around, right in that area. So I think it's wise of us to consider the location of our little industrial, and that maybe some things aren't appropriate due to the location.
Is that the only location
Mhm.
in town? Is that one?
Yeah.
So it seems to me that in our zones, in defining our zones, we are allowing certain things, or we're encouraging certain things, and we're sort of discouraging other things. Like in a residential zone, we're encouraging people to live in single-family dwellings or duplexes, or apartment residential areas where we're not allowing any helicopters in a residential zone. In our industrial zone, we're encouraging an industry,
Mhm.
and maybe the people who want to live there, they are going to have to put up with some noises and some things. It's not going to be, they're not going to be the chosen, they're going to be a little further down on the list than an industrial use, because we've put them high on the list everywhere else. So you can't have, everybody doesn't get to be at the top of the list everywhere. Some zones you get to be at the top of the list. Other zones, other things are at the top of the list. So I can see how, personally, I can see how you could coexist with, if you wanted to live in an area where there's, a factory or something that made noise because it was allowed, you would just have to make your own accommodation with that. We're trying to accommodate as many uses as we can in the town.
So if we're allowing lumber and plywood mills, big trucks,
Yeah, it's right.
heavy equipment coming and going, usually over the speed limit, to be around schools and parks and playgrounds, I just don't see the mix.
Well, yes, but where are those trucks heavy trucks going to go?
No, I'm saying it's industrial. That's
Yeah.
where they should go.
That's where they
and
should
maybe a heliport. But parks and playgrounds along with that doesn't make sense to me. That's where
Well, it
it
should
seems.
not be allowed in.
Yes, that's the
industrial.
conflict. They should
Yeah.
not be allowed in the.
So Crystal,
Yes.
so as our code reads now, a single unit is allowed in that area.
Yes.
And,
That is correct.
and it's true that the state requires us to allow childcare facilities in all zones. Is that correct?
All zones that have single-family dwellings.
Okay.
So if we don't have or don't allow single-family dwellings in that area,
Mhm.
then we can differentiate on the rest of these.
Does
But I
anybody
think
know,
we've already allowed them.
What's in our zone currently? I
are
don't,
there any, are there any? I don't think there are any.
Completely vacant as far as.
it's
It's
vacant.
just wild scrubland.
Okay.
Joseph, you wanted to?
This is just a
You go ahead. Did
No.
you have something you want to say?
I had a quick question for Crystal, seeing as we only have one small industrially zoned area, how hard would it be to reclassify that zone to commercial?
Well, the interesting thing about industrial zones at the state level is they don't like us to take them out. One of the things we had to do when we were organizing the plan was to have a certain amount of commercial, a certain amount of industrial. And it did include these things like cement and asphalt plant and people, and it did include things like pulp and paper mills. But people have been trying to take out their industrial zones lately because they don't want those things. And there's been lawsuits and everything of whether you can just wipe out your industrial zone. And so if that's true that our industrial zone doesn't have things in it, maybe some of these, I just assumed it had single family dwellings and all this stuff. And then here we see that they have even an outright use of hotels and stuff. I don't think it's a good mix. Why do we have all these things thrown together in here if we don't even have them on the land? So I don't know. And maybe this isn't even the right time to talk about it because
That's
it's
a
like,
clean slate right now. We should.
Commissioner Lawton, I like your idea. I think you're making a good point. And I don't, it sounds like we can't get rid of the zone, but I think making it truly be an industrial zone
Yes.
makes sense to me.
Yes.
It's small, it's at the end of the
I
town.
think you guys should go look at it maybe before you do that, though,
I've seen,
because
it's a
if somebody's
long
counting
paradise.
on this to be their home or something and they've bought property to do that, we could be in a lot of a lot of hurt if we start changing the code.
Well, I thought that's why we're here. I thought
Well, we're here to do a housing project.
yeah,
We have a pretty narrow scope of what we're supposed to be doing here.
yeah.
But I don't disagree with you at all. I've always thought it was a weird zone.
Well, could we add things to the industrial zone, which is a conditional use permit that you're proposing in the, let me find it here. In the other zone where we're allowing, and I was questioning some of these as noise and air pollutant generating businesses, maybe we could allow some of those in the industrial zone, move them over there. Because it seems like if any of them do produce pollutants, air pollutants, noise, that would be more important or appropriate in that zone than a commercial zone. Does that make sense? Because in commercial zone, you're allowing many more different types of uses, including single unit dwellings and all those things. So if there's a potential for certainly backlash from the community given any of these commercial enterprises that produce pollutants or produce lighting, even the type of lighting they may need. That I'm just saying it might make more sense to move those into the commercial
And
or into the industrial.
eliminate residential from the
Yeah.
industrial zone.
I'm
Yeah,
wary of,
it's
I'm
bad
wary
mix.
of moving, I'm wary of really changing anything in industrial now, other than getting rid of these four things. It's like a sleeping dog, don't wake it up. It just seems like a big deal to mess with it. Um,
Well,
Yeah,
even adding like accessory dwellings, nobody says you have to do that. That's making it more densely residential.
well, in I kind of, like I said before, if you want to live in a if you want to live in an industrial zone, you take your chance of living next to something that's going to make some noise. You just, it's like a choice.
Do you know?
In the industrial zone, the industry should have precedent. That's what the zone is.
So maybe the question is like, you've got a whole bunch of stuff here that are either retail or even tourist retail, like I don't know how to do this at
Yeah.
this
Well,
time.
if we didn't do anything except
Take those out.
what we had to do and only just take those four things out and move on, I think we would, I don't think we would, I think we'd be okay.
Well, it's interesting that we're thinking of taking out things that probably should be in an industrial zone and leaving in things like churches, schools, parks, and playground in an industrial zone that probably shouldn't be in an industrial zone.
But I think the reason we're taking these four things out is we don't want them in any zone in our city.
Basically, yes.
Because it doesn't enhance our city. It's not, it could have adverse, and it's right up against
No,
Cedar.
I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
why would one be okay and not the other? If someone owner in that area was planning to put up a paper mill or a cement processing plant of any sort, they could come after us as well, right? Just because that's what we're leery of, is the conflict with owners and their existing need to use it
But we don't have anybody right now that is,
that we know of.
and so it's just, if it's not in the plan, it's just not,
Yeah.
they don't come here and say, I want to put in.
It would have had to have been, they would have had to have had a planning clearance at the city already.
Or they
In
might,
order-
but they could own the property thinking
could.
that down the
Thinking-
line, they're gonna
Yeah,
put
on
in
any
a
of these.
golf club.
But I believe
manufacturing.
for,
They're
this
gonna
issue
put a
came
paper
up with the
mill there.
lawyer with short-term rentals, and the courts have found that the fact that a city can take away the right to take away a license for a short-term rental the city can't be sued for that because they can still use it as a rental. So there's still other uses that they could
Right.
use with the property.
Right.
So no, they can't put a cement plant in, but they can put whatever,
Hotel,
Helipad.
a church,
a helipad,
a
or
school,
a church, or
with the helipad.
a
Helipad.
bit mining facility. So I'd like to bring this in and move on if we can.
Did we make the decision to remove these?
I'd like to we have made a decision, I believe, to remove airport cement, pulp, and rendering plant. And did we want to leave heliport?
I thought we did.
Kind
You
of,
want to leave a
kind
heliport,
of
raise
might
your
need
hand.
one someday.
I know, me too.
We'll be using the
otherwise-
schoolyard
Yeah.
in an
Okay.
emergency.
So Crystal, we are leaving heliport and we're removing cement or asphalt, pulp or paper mill, and rendering plant or slaughterhouse. And I think everything else we're going to leave as is. because
Okay, let's go back to, let's keep on then.
and then I had a
I
question.
do think that this industrial zone is messed up. I mean, I don't want to take it on right now, but I think it's messed up. It has this sort of outright uses of, all kinds of residential and hotels and motels, and it's interesting to me. And then medical and dental stuff that are allowed in many other zones, even residential. And it's like, what are we trying to do here? So that's why I put in the wording like light industrial, because I'm like limited to light industrial uses, because I'm like, where do these mix?
It's messy. I don't think anybody's going to do anything out there in the near future. I think it's going to be sitting there. I also have a dream that at some point we're going to open this up again in the next months or years. This is my dream, and actually go through this code again and do some other things to it also. Don't know if that's going to happen, but
Yeah, I just think it invites conflict. And if we're waiting for a couple of years to maybe change something down the road, that just gives more time for that conflict to evolve. So
I don't think the city wants me to spend a lot of time though on things that aren't paid for by the grant. That's my concern.
yeah, we have a grant for housing here, and I think we need to get the housing part done and move on.
So on page 12, we have marine activity zone. And
But
this is,
can I go back? I had
Oh,
a
yeah.
question on the chapter 33, 1733. Item O says the applicant shall provide a signed acknowledgement of time on a permit for conditional use. Is that? So is it tying? Is it tying?
what page is this?
So that's page 33. This is on the site plan review. The applicant shall provide a signed, so is it kind of like a conditional use then?
well, when they actually go to the planning commission, I don't think I've got it in here yet, but when we take it to the planning commission, it will be using the timelines and
Okay,
because a public hearing requires certain things. And so
that's a
that
plus.
was, it almost becomes a conditional use when it's of a certain size.
Okay. Thank you.
But I don't think I've got all those wording. I haven't got all that wording in there yet. Well, we have some of it. Okay. So page 12, this is another zone that this is the marine zone down by the port. And when I got into this is interesting. You'll look at the conditional uses. I don't think we've ever had anybody apply for any of those, and yet I think they're happening.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's interesting, because if the port doesn't think they're conditional uses, and they are, that's why I have all those question marks.
Yeah, the
But
port is planning on a huge development down there.
It's not as big.
I don't think we've ever had any of these come in while I've been here for conditional use. And yet all of these things are happening down there.
Maybe we could get somebody from the port to describe what the actual plan is.
I've been to a port meeting. I know what the plan is.
Recent one?
Yeah.
Since we got the okay by our senators. And
Yes,
NOAA.
there's gonna be a food processing. There's gonna be a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Big building. A number of buildings. So good point.
So
Chris.
I don't think we can do this either, but it just came to my recognition that it was like, well, we're not processing these, and they're conditional uses.
Have they come to the city with any plans?
No, not yet.
So there are a lot of things here, experimental laboratory that are uses permitted outright. Here's Doc's bulk. I wonder if it would be appropriate to have site plan review for a certain particular size, like you mentioned on the other zones.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we should go there, but I do know that I just kind of looked at it like with awe. Like, I don't think we've ever had a conditional use permit for a restaurant or anything there.
Well, when they come in with the plan
Well,
for a permit, they're going to have to provide a site plan.
Mhm.
And if some of that is not typically what you would be looking at, then there will be a conditional use permit for that.
right? Well,
If it's not outright permitted.
yeah. Oh, eating and drinking establishments. Yeah. Well, there was the,
Griff's by the dock.
Yeah.
Griff's on the dock.
yeah, Griff's was down there.
And that's been there.
But maybe that was grandfathered as a use,
Yeah.
but then they just changed owners. I don't know. I just pointed it out with the question marks.
It seems these are all good uses. But I'm wondering if, like I say, that it should fit into the category, if it's large, that there should be a site plan review. I mean, a site plan review, if based on size, shouldn't be limited to one zone. If you're going to have a site plan review in a commercial zone or an industrial zone or any zone, it's 10 MU, it should be all the same.
And
What's the
we
size?
have to decide that size or I can't put it in.
You know,
So you mentioned 5,000 square feet,
Well, I mean, that I was just throwing that out.
and I was just doing some numbers myself. That's 100 by 50, or 40 by 100 would be 4,000.
That's the size of a large house, actually.
2,500.
well, and the other thing, Greg, some of this is what they're doing is allowed outright. The processing, the little receiving station with their trucks and all that. But then there's a separate part that is the eating and, the coffee shop and all that stuff, right? I mean, it was kind of like the southwest part was all, from what I saw, was all just regular stuff, just upgrading it. What they're doing now, but upgrading it.
Right.
And then when you got a little further, then you had the cafe and then all the
You've got a big structure.
shop and stuff.
I think there was only going to be one big structure, and then the rest of it is just kind of like you say, is upgrading what's there. Well, the size that's in the 10 MU seems really big,
I think so too. I think it's too big.
125 feet, or whatever. So 50 by 50 is 250. 50 by 50 is half of a city lot. Half of a 50 by 100 city lot. That's 2,500 square feet. I'm thinking 2,500 or 3,000 would be a worthy of
A review.
of review.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's, I'd like to say, I think that's a lot better because I worked in a building in Coos Bay that was only 800 and it was a fairly decent size for a little town. I mean, 800 square feet
Yeah.
even was. And so I think we're way too big with the number we have.
Yeah.
And when you think of that area, it,
Well, we think about any area. I mean, we're picking an area. We're picking for the whole town. I mean, we have to pick, if we're going to use this, we would have to pick one for each area. And I would imagine it would be the same,
it doesn't have to be,
but it wouldn't have to be, no.
because this is kind of unique area. Down at the dock and all along that corridor coming up on the street, correct? Is that
Yeah.
what we're talking about?
Mhm.
And there are some houses there, small. I just think there's not much land there to put anything big anyway. And would we want to, because it's going to affect the view. Practically anything you put there is going to affect any view.
Well, it's kind of down in
Well,
there.
you'll see it off looking over the hill.
Over at Castaways or at the viewpoint.
Yeah, from the viewpoint, you look down and you'd see it, but it wouldn't stick up unless you were on the road down below.
There's a height restriction.
Right, yeah.
Um,
I would just,
what do we think about numbers, about sizes? I like 2,500, but I don't know.
I built houses that were considerably larger than that.
Well, that's good for them.
And, and it was, you just got a permit.
Are you talking 2,500 perimeter or counting the second floor?
Well, there was a couple that were probably well over 2,000 feet on one floor. So, and you just went to the city and took your plans in and got the review, and there was no size limit on that.
Do you have an idea on a number that might be worthy of a plan review? Being a builder
We're in Port Orford.
I know, we're in
in Port Orford?
Well, something like this, though, it's a totally different deal, and it seems to me they're gonna make a big splash when they want to apply for a permit. There's gonna be engineering, there's gonna be all kinds of stuff going on there that is gonna be, you'd think that they're gonna want input from the city. So I don't know about size, maybe 5,000 square feet. What's a warehouse?
What's a warehouse?
Yeah.
Warehouse.
Huge. It's, I mean, Amazon?
it doesn't, we can always approve something bigger, correct? I mean, isn't,
Well, we're going to basically we're making a recommendation to the city council. It's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to go, and it's nice if they can take a number and go up or down with it, but they have something to work with.
Mhm.
That's what I see, rather than throw out the idea. If we've got a good idea, and they can tweak the number if they feel that it's not what they like.
And this is just a number that triggers getting a site plan review, correct?
That's correct.
Crystal? So
Oh,
anything can go up above that,
I thought we were talking about a conditional use permit above a certain number.
or a conditional use.
Or, well, I'm talking
Conditional use permit doesn't have a trigger number.
about a site plan. And the site plan can be triggered, I believe, by the city, but it would by law, by ordinance, if it was over a certain size, be triggered. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
We're triggering it through ordinance. The city may trigger it because it says may.
So if you have a smaller number, then that just gets, they're going to do a site plan anyway. But it just,
For me, half a city block is, you want to build something half a city block, get a site plan review. That's my 2 cents. You like 5,000?
Well,
I-
I'd have to really draw it out.
Yeah.
I can't think on, actually how big a square footage.
We could start with 2,500, I think.
And Crystal gave her 2 cents. She thought we were too large at 5,000. Correct, Crystal?
I think that one in the Battle Rock MU is too large.
Yeah.
But
Great.
And I'd like to see them all the same so that we have a trigger number. We don't have to be messing around with 3,000, 2,500, something like that. I mean, just one number, and we know that triggers. Going
Do
to,
you like 2,500?
So,
I mean, that's fine with me. I don't know what number it should be. That's why they're all blank.
Yeah. 50 feet by 50 feet. 50 feet in one direction.
Yeah.
50 feet in another direction. That's a lot of space. That's a big building.
And then it would also be triggered if you had like a little cabins, the way we're writing the code now. Because we have now that it's a building. And the thought was that there's been people wanting to do separate structures that were part of a development. And so that would be the footprint of all of everything added if it was done that way. Also,
Okay.
Well, if you're going to put in storage units, your storage units are 20 feet deep, and it's one building that might be 50 feet long.
Mhm.
So that's how many
1,000.
1,000.
thousand?
So you
So
might want to, maybe you want to lower the number. Is that what you're saying? Maybe?
well, I think I kind of want to look at that plan that the Noah came up with just to kind of get an idea. Because when I looked at it from on the computer, I was just, that looks pretty big. But then when you see the scale of the people on there, it didn't look that big.
Yeah.
So, but this doesn't just apply.
That's right.
No.
It would apply to
Everything.
industrial zone or commercial zone or
Yeah.
anything else.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
just a quick aside, I did look up how big an Amazon warehouse is, at least the one I used to work at. It measures out to over 1 million square feet. So not that will really help you make the decision, but just to give you an idea of,
They cover the whole town.
For small potatoes.
yeah, it may have, because once I got in the building, it took me about 5 or 10 minutes to get to my station. So, they can be pretty big.
Okay.
Go.
Well, I want to move along here for Crystal here because
How about 2,000?
2,000. You like 2,000?
1,500?
2,000 sounds good to me.
2,000 sounds good.
2,000 sounds good to us.
What is it for you, Crystal?
Going
sounds
on.
fine.
Let's move
I can
on.
plug it in.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead and move on, Crystal. We're all with you.
Okay, so we're not going to do anything. We're not going to change anything in the port. It's not really our purview, but it's really a question that I have because I saw this stuff, noticed it actually.
So, Crystal, are you suggesting then, or I guess I'm suggesting that we add the site plan review piece to the,
Well, I don't know because I think this is already messed up. I don't know. These are all conditional uses, which makes them subject to the conditional use permit. But I don't think anybody's been applying.
oh, I see.
And I don't know if anybody's building anything new or not. I don't know. Maybe it does work and there's just nothing new. I don't know.
Okay, so if specific to that area, if they, so offices related to marine activity would be an outright use, but if there was an eating or drinking establishment involved, it would need to be a condition. So anything they do down there is going to be a conditional use.
Pretty much.
It'll be a piece of it, yes. So I think the question is off the table as far as I'm concerned. I think
Well,
it's
the question wasn't whether these were appropriate as much as whether they were even followed.
Followed, yeah.
whether they were being processed properly, was that the question?
I don't think we've ever processed anything down there.
There hasn't been much down there, really.
Maybe
The
that's the reason.
cannery
No, there
was,
isn't much.
and there's just
The old
the
freezer building.
South Coast
they
Tour
tore down.
little building and a
There's
a
not much
little
down there.
crab shack. So there's
Well,
nothing
I'm
much.
just going to leave it as it is. I'm going to take off the question marks. It was just if you notice anything that we should be doing over time, we need to bring it up. And
Thank you.
but these are all conditional use permits, and they're conditional use permits without any guidance in the code, which is fine.
Oh, I'm sure that the planning commission will have plenty of guidance.
Yeah, and you guys did really well with the RV park. I just thought since we were now making RV parks, the state made them where they could be permanent housing or they could be short term, that we needed to get a handle on what they were building. So
Okay.
then I started putting them into site plan review or conditional use. I guess they're conditional use because that's what they always were. Okay, then we go on, and then the next zone, there's no changes in the overlays, shoreland overlay proposed. We get to the Battle Rock, and we have some of these, that's page 13, and we have some of these same questions about footprint, but I think we're gonna put the wording in 2,000 square feet
Yay.
for the site plan. And then we get into the code here on page 14. So on page 14, you see this big thing of yellow on 14 on 14.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be changed to 2,000 square feet.
Yes.
Mhm.
And then most of these other things are just word changes to modernize the code a little bit and things that the state requires. Until we get to page 15. This is where we have this size thing again on page 15D, D15, building size.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to make that 2,000 square feet, right?
Yes.
Anybody more than 125 feet in length.
Okay, so then we just keep walking through here. And there's nothing that I've changed from what you've seen before on these. If I did, it was something small. It wasn't. But then we get to page 23. That's, again, we have that size thing, and we're going to make that 2,000 square feet on page 23B. And we might do that instead of naming them all. I'm not sure. I think these are conditional uses, so we probably will name them. It's
Do we
an
wanna change-
and any large structure, or any large structure, 2,000 square feet, because these are already conditional uses in several zones.
Do we want to consider the 125 feet length or?
Yeah, why do we even have that in there if we've got the 2,000 square feet?
I guess if it was a long thing like a
Storage room?
Storage units.
storage
Oh, yeah.
facility or a motel that overlooked some beach or something, it could be long and skinny. But I don't know if you want that or not.
It's true.
That's fair.
Yeah, because that would be less than
Yeah.
six, oh, that'd be greater than
2,000 feet.
2,000 square feet. That'd be 4,170.
Hmm.
If it's,
So do you want to, I think that 125 feet came out of the Battle Rock. So do
Yeah.
you want it to just be 2,000 square feet?
If we
Yeah.
do that
Probably-
to
yeah,
this,
well,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 okay.
Well, then we
It
should
should be-
change it back. Where was the other ones?
It should be, I think it should be uniform throughout
Yeah.
the town. And
The
if
Marine.
the city council wants to make it 3,000 or whatever they want to make it.
Yeah, wherever we put the 2,000 square feet, we should take out the 125.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make it-
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and then you keep going through this. We've seen all this before. On page 30. So I took out most of the reference to cottage residential because there were a lot of descriptions and a lot of site plan stuff and everything. And we decided to take that out. But since we had it as a use in a planned unit development only, that's where we have it as a use. And we had it as a definition. I did put in some of these things to make it like the Battle Rock, where if they're doing a little cottage cluster, you don't want them to do a bunch of little buildings, little tiny buildings that don't have any features. So you don't want them to look like barracks. So I did leave in or put in this thing about having features, which is number 5.
Mhm.
And you're including the word cottage cluster, which had not been in there.
No, I went back to that. I mean, we talked about that previous year, and then I thought the state wouldn't want us to use that. So I changed it all to cottage residential, and we had a whole bunch of stuff on it of how you do cottage residential. And then we thought that was overbearing because you could do it any way you wanted in a planned unit development, as long as we had the definition. And then there were a couple things here that I thought we should have that, that we tell these people if they're going to build a cottage development or a cottage cluster. Oh, and I saw that the state said that you could define cottage cluster yourself. At first,
Okay.
I thought that was a little not good for us to take their name and define it a different way. But then I saw something where they said you could do that.
Okay, thank you.
So then I put these in just a little bit. One, that we don't want them to use it as vacation rentals. Number 2, that they should be separated so that they're not like barracks again. If you like that, that's number 4. And then number 5, that they should have some features on those little houses, if they want to do that.
Okay.
Are you guys okay with this?
That's a question.
Oh, never mind. I didn't read closely enough. At least 3 of the following for number 5. 'Cause I was
And
curious.
this matches what's in the Battle Rock zone too.
Okay. Attached garage is one of them. If the purpose of a cottage cluster is that they're smaller dwellings, would there really be room for an attached garage?
That's just a choice.
One of 3.
I know.
Yeah.
What prompted my question.
Yeah. What about I see on G, covered porch entry. Is there some way to word it so that it's a front
Oh, yes.
So we don't like that. There was a manufactured home put on down there,
Lakeshore.
and there's no front. It's like you're looking at the end of a building. There's no front entry. It's around the
I
side.
think you could do that in the, because these would come to you as a planned unit development. And they would have to lay them out. And this is just to tell them what they're expected to do. And then if somebody came to you with those, I think you could tell them how you wanted them to do it.
Okay.
But we don't want them to have a surprise all of a sudden if they think they're going to do something really on the cheap. Because that's what they're trying to do, is do affordable houses. And
Right.
but still you don't want something that just looks like a bunch of barracks. And so I thought, well, let's just put it in here out of the Battle Rock, the same thing. You have to do a little bit to make these look interesting or attractive or something. And I think that you would have the chance, because the planned unit development is like a conditional use. And so they're going to be coming in and you would be working with them.
Gotcha.
And that's the only place cottage cluster is allowed or incorporated. That doesn't mean somebody couldn't choose to do it somewhere else, but they would have to figure out how to do it, which makes it kind of harder because you don't have a way to decide the roads and who's going to do them and all that stuff.
So we have nothing in our code that says that a building has to be front facing. Like in a residential street.
We don't.
We don't. I'm asking, I don't think we do. Do we?
I don't think so. We do have something that says you have to have 50-foot frontage on some lots, but that's all.
Mhm.
And people do that sometimes by just making a 50-foot, it's not a panhandle. It's,
Flag?
yeah, flag lot, 50-foot wide flag lot. But I think that's in your code. It might be somebody else's. I thought I'd seen it though.
Okay, where are we at here? Are we,
Well, I think I've got some guidance. And we have a lot of questions about things that I don't think we'll ever be able to get done in this project. And I don't know, are we kind of okay to go ahead with this site plan?
I still have a little uneasy feeling about eliminating the ability for citizens to have knowledge or have input or in some of these areas. That's just,
Well, they couldn't have input on anything except if it's over 2,000 square feet. And they haven't had input in the past. So we were trying to give them some input.
The problem is, in the past, with regard to housing, is sometimes people have too much input into housing and developments that it nixes it. So I think that's a balance that we have to have, so that there are times and conditions that we would want public input, but well, I'd want to limit it in many cases just so it doesn't become a hang up.
this seems to be a fair compromise to me.
Yeah, I think so.
And I appreciate you taking the extra time to think this through and go kind of follow your gut and
Yeah,
send it to.
I was having sleepless nights about it.
Okay, well, can we move on then? Do you have what you need?
Yes.
Okay. Review proposed uses in zones, site plan reviews and new commercial development. That's what we talked about. Other, probably that's what we talked about. Discussion items, planning clearances approved since last meeting.
None.
None. Report on progress, conditional use permit 2302.
All right, so that was the RV park. Earlier, what was it, Crystal? It wasn't earlier this week. It would have been last week or the week before. Mr. Clark sent Crystal and I an email with a photo explaining that his crew had finished demolishing the accessory building that was on the lot. And when we approved the conditional use, that was what we set out, or that's what all of you set out as being substantial construction. So he doesn't need to come in to renew. And since we're talking about it, they are currently in the process of getting their tentative plat finished so they can submit the final for sign off. They just resubmitted today, but I don't know if I didn't have time to review it. I don't know if Crystal did either.
Thank you, Joseph. Application for appointment, Carrie Aschauer. Does anybody know if I'm pronouncing that right? Aschauer?
A shower.
Aschauer.
A shout. Oh man,
Aschauer.
I don't want to say it on a recording now.
Okay. We've had it on the agenda. Does anybody have any comments or a motion?
I move we accept the application of Corey Aschauer for Planning Commissioner.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Okay, let's take a vote. Commissioner Lovendall,
Aye. Yes.
Commissioner Lawton,
Yes.
Commissioner Boydston,
Yes.
Commissioner Thielen is also a yes, so it's unanimous. So it'll go to the city council now and see what they say. I appreciate her putting forth her request. Uniform sewer and water requirements. This is something I put on, and I don't have it in front of me, but I know it pretty well. So in the 10 MU, basically the code requires sewer and water for all developed lots. And there's language that goes with that. In the other zones, what there are houses, only sewer is required. And there's language that goes along with that. And the language that goes along with that says how the sewer and water are to be done, but it doesn't say that sewer, doesn't say that water is required by the city. Now, the city has passed kind of a stopgap ordinance to require people to have water, have city water, to have city water hookups, even though they're getting wells. I thought it would be a good idea. It was brought to me by a counselor to put this in our code, as long as we have our code open, to just drop it in and have it the same in each zone. So I'm recommending that we do that. I don't know if you guys have it in front of you, but I have it in my mind.
I don't.
I have.
I'm trying to find it on the phone.
I have one comment.
Should be in the packet.
Commissioner Lovendall.
I didn't
I-
print it out.
Oh, it's
I really agree
I-
with this. I think this is really important. But the part I would consider striking is where it says, at the request of the developer, the city shall consider sharing the cost of the mainline extension or lift station, but the city is under no obligation to participate. We don't have any money in the city at this time. And I think that might give false hope to a builder, and I wouldn't want to lead them on. And I also don't know what the criteria is if we say yes, Carol, I like you, or, I like your project, so we're going to help pay for yours, but not Jerry, for whatever reason. And so does that open us up to some sort of litigation or um, situation where, and on the other side of the coin is, so I say, oh, Carol, I'm going to pay for half of yours. We're going to help you out here. Does that mean I have to do it for Mark when he comes to me? And we don't have any money. And I just hate to offer something or say when we just don't have it. And so that's why I would recommend striking that last sentence.
Crystal, is this a usual language, or can you see, does this sound like something that might not be applied fairly, or can you say why it's even in there? That the city may pay for?
I think it's already in some city language, but I'm not supposed to be working on this right now.
Okay, well, I won't ask you then.
I mean, I didn't make it up. I mean, I think it came out of some language we already have.
Okay, it did. Joseph?
So taking an educated guess or, an assumption, which, what they say when you are assuming something. I know that for a time, the city was giving free hookups basically in exchange for easements to do utility lines through people's property when we were initially doing the sewer plant. So it could be a holdover code from that time where, basically when we had to have something in the code to say, we're going to, assume some of the cost or trade, so we can run the line through your property. You won't have to pay for the hookups, and that's like the exchange of value. Would that be my guess?
And if that was the case, we could strike this. And then when the city decides they need some, they can maybe negotiate. But it shouldn't be, I just don't know.
Mhm.
I just would like to eliminate
Yeah,
any
I
of
agree.
the issues that I spoke about.
Yeah,
And because that doesn't prevent the city from coming in and saying,
doing something else.
doing something else. I just have that feeling.
I think I don't know enough about this to strike it. I think there could be possibly a benefit for the city, and I think the city councilors won't want us to strike it because they won't want to have their power taken away from them.
But that's not power. This is saying, developer, you can apply for this, and
It does. It limits the ability of the city to make the kind of deal that Joseph's talking about.
no.
Go ahead, Joseph.
Also, Crystal, you have more experience than I do here, so this is a question directed towards you. If we didn't have something like they're in it, would it be assumed that the city would be the one responsible for paying for the line extensions, or would that usually fall on the applicant? Because it could be in there to say, we won't absorb the cost, like, unless there's extenuating circumstances, not,
Well, that was traditionally how I've seen it in some codes where the city talks about sharing expenses and stuff. It's not just in this one, I've seen it in other ones too, but I think that Joseph, you might be right about why that's in there. Because the city sometimes can get, I don't know if it's still possible, but they get grants or something, and they do have a right to make deals with the private people that are increasing something that the city needs. That's all I know.
But
So
this wouldn't prohibit that. This language says that the developer can apply. It doesn't talk about
the developer can ask for
can
help.
ask for help, and then I just think that opens up a lot of other issues, but doesn't curtail the city from, offering at some point or making a deal at some point. It doesn't curtail that. This is just, I don't like to lead them on.
Commissioner Lovendall, your idea is not a bad idea. it feels like it's over my pay grade to even consider something like this. We're not attorneys. We don't have any experience. We're just citizens. It's in the code. I think shaking it out I'm not in favor of it.
In my experience,
Yeah,
where you had lots that weren't served by the utilities and you wanted to develop these two lots and say you had a couple lots beyond it, the city would require you to run the utilities all the way down to the other existing properties, even though you didn't own them. So it cost you a lot of money to service two lots where there might be two more that you didn't own, and now you provided those services down. But that created an SDC that when they developed those other lots, then the city got paid for the utility connection. So it was a pretty good deal for the city. And it cost the guy on this end a lot more money. So having a deal where you could get the city to cover it, because they know if you do provide utilities to these other lots that eventually will develop, that's tax revenue down the line.
But we don't have any money.
Right.
We
Still.
don't have any money.
so
So why offer?
Yeah.
Why make an offer on something that we can't do? We don't have the money. We are in dire straits.
Right.
So I see no benefit in saying, yeah, you can come to us. We don't have any money, and we're not going to have any money for a while. So why make an offer? I think it's a hollow promise.
Yeah.
I think that, would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion to strike the last sentence in these two provisions, starting at the request to no obligation to participate.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Can we consult with some of the counselors?
That's the issue, is we're just citizens. We don't know nothing. It all sounds like a good idea,
Yeah.
and I like the idea, but I think we're getting in water that's deeper than we are.
But we're saying, we go forward and we say, okay, we don't think this is a good idea. And they say, okay, we're going to put it back in. But they have the obligation. I mean, I think we have an obligation if we think something is, and I'm not talking about this, in general, is the right thing to do. And because we think the counselor is not going to go forward, I think for us to send the idea, that's our job as citizens.
You know, a point I was going to make additionally was when we say, for instance, in one, provision of sewer and water shall be provided by the city of Port Orford. I want that changed to may, because what if they can't? This is obligating them. They must. And same down on number 1, sewer service shall be provided.
We can have discussion after.
And I'm thinking that we should say
Oh,
may.
yeah, our discussion is on our motion. We have a discussion on the motion
Well-
as given.
Point I'm making is with that as well. This at least says may rather than shall, which is what I disagree with on the other. So it does give them leeway in maybe situations that we can't conceive of at this time.
But this is the developer asking the city. We're saying
Right.
that you may ask the city.
Right.
And we really can't, anyway. We
And-
don't have the money.
But the city can say no. But
Is there any new discussion on this?
Okay.
I think all the points have been made.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Boydston,
Oh,
are you in favor of the motion to,
I thought we already voted.
no, we just got to move it.
Yes. Could you state I lost?
Okay, the motion is to,
strike.
what was your motion?
My motion was to strike the last sentence in the language for sewer and water hookups in part 2, starting at the request and ending at no obligation to participate.
Yes. Strike the language.
Commissioner Lawton,
No.
Commissioner Levendahl.
Yes.
I'm a no, so it doesn't pass.
We need another.
So
Can I bring up the other shall may situation here?
I'm
on this?
sorry?
I wanted to comment on the other shall may situation here, which provision of sewer and water shall be provided by the city of Port Orford and distributions. Again, maybe we can't. Maybe, I don't like the word shall. To me,
Well,
it legally limits the city.
so the city is intending to do that. It just is not able to do it at this point. You can't make it happen if it can't happen. But they're going to.
I'm sorry, they're going to what?
As soon as they have water, they will. But they can't right now because there's no water.
So in all situations, in all conditions, they shall provide it.
Yes.
See,
I-
that's where I say,
Yeah.
I think I might be able to give an example for what Commissioner Lawton is trying to illustrate. There are a handful of houses in town that are on septic, specifically because it is logistically infeasible for us to provide sewer to those houses. So that's why she wants to switch it to may, if I'm understanding correctly, because it's the city may provide the utilities.
people can
when
come
it's
back and say,
feasible.
you wrote it, it says shall. It's an
I
obligation to
I
me.
think we are so far out of our league on this as citizens. I don't even want to get close to this.
Also very fair opinion for you to have.
So I want to move on.
Okay,
And
I said my piece.
okay, thank you. Thank you. And I
always make
appreciate that you did and everyone else has too. City planner comments.
Beyond that, Mayor.
Crystal?
Okay. That's me. One of the reasons the city hasn't authorized me to work on this sewer and water is exactly what's happening. Because something that seems like it should be simple, black and white, becomes very
Questionable.
something that has to be debated on almost every little thing that we do. And the city manager is deciding of whether they want me to incorporate this in our project or not. And they may approve it or they may not. But I was just bringing that up because one thing that I forgot to tell you today was even the stuff that we added for the CUP extensions took about 4 hours of work only because I had to incorporate it with our appeal stuff. We had something in there about how to appeal, but it needed to be incorporated into the rest of our code. And so you'll see that that's just a little bit different than the exact wording that we did in the planning commission. And that's all I have to say. I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's why I'm not supposed to work on it.
Thank you, Crystal. Planning commission comments.
We have a workshop.
I don't know that we should
We have.
threatening with your hammer there.
I'm going to hit myself on the head, so I'm going to do. We need to set a date and time for our next meeting, which will be a workshop.
Excuse me, I do have a question.
Yes.
Whatever happened with the location for the bottle drop? I never did hear back from the,
It was the original, not the original. They want to put it in front of the existing bottle drop.
okay. So they didn't go to the south side of the
No,
building?
They didn't. They didn't.
Sorry. Thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Boydson. Some clarification on why they decided to make that change. After looking at the plans, they were worried about the safety with it being near parking spaces and adjacent to a road. They were worried about people getting out and dropping bottles there, posing safety issues. So that's why they ultimately decided with the north corner of the other parking lot.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Any other planning commission comments? So we need to set a date and time for a workshop. So we have February
I'm
11th.
sorry, public comments? I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you skip over public considerations?
Oh, I did skip over. I beg your pardon. We have a member of the public. Please speak. State your name, where you live, and go ahead.
Hey, sorry, Greg. This is Jen Bailey. I live at 418 16th Street. Well, first of all, I'm a little bit confused about where the bottle drop is going now. I'd commented on that before. So I want clarification on that. But I'm actually commenting on the fact in general that it seems like you all just automatically approved a new member of your commission, Corey, and I don't know her, but I haven't ever seen her at a meeting or seen her comment, and I'm just wondering about the process for approving new members. I'm not questioning Corey at all. I do not know her, but being a member of the planning commission is pretty important. And if it's just a rubber stamp from you and then it's a rubber stamp from the city council, I have to question that. But on the other hand, I understand that we don't have enough volunteers. So thank goodness there are people volunteering. I'm just asking you about your process for approving of new members. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen, for commenting. The bottle drop location is to be in front of the current bottle drop on that part of the parking lot. That was their second choice. As far as the application for appointment, I actually have met Ms. Ashauer, so I have some personal information about her. Seemed like a good person. That's why I voted for her.
Well, there's also quite a bit of information on the application itself that we look at and consider.
True.
Thank you. Thank you. I just brought it up because you all just passed it without any discussion. And I just wanted to, not to imply that you wouldn't consider your choices, honestly, but it's a big decision. And I just wanted to make sure it was being considered.
She did, and everybody has to fill out an application, who they are, what their experience is, and we all got to read that before we voted on it. So, yeah.
Would you like us to read this, or would you like to see the application? I think it's public.
It's online.
Correct?
She can see it
Oh,
online.
no. I saw her. No, I saw her application.
Okay.
I saw Corey's application. I read all of your packets. I'm not questioning her at all, just to clarify. I just feel in general that it's important to consider the members. And I'm just glad to hear that you all considered it, because I wouldn't want, I realize there are few people applying for these committees and commissions. I just wouldn't want it to be an automatic rubber stamp.
Thank you for your comments. Let's move on to the date of the workshop. That would be February 11th. Was that the plan, Crystal, was to have a public workshop on the 11th?
On February,
Yes,
that would be public hearing.
public hearing.
Where,
Thank you. That's what I thought. And next, on December 10th is a workshop. That's our next meeting.
yeah, and the workshop we actually had tonight.
Oh,
So the next workshop that we have is going to be our final one before the public hearings.
in
Which-
January.
I think January might be the best.
Was this happening?
Okay.
As a workshop?
So,
Okay, so
But if I have to if I see the need to make a bunch more changes where I want to talk with you about those before we're at the final meeting, I'll try to work myself into a workshop that you have in December.
thank you. Thank you. So our next meeting is December 10th at 3:30. I hope to see you all here with our new member. And with that, I'm adjourning us at 5:33.